Unfortunately, Netanyahu is preventing us from approaching true victory, which is the justification for the painful ongoing price. And this is why we quit the national unity government today with a heavy heart, yet we feel that it is the right decision. We are now in the midst of a campaign that will impact the fate of Israel generations ahead.
That was Benny Gantz. He is a less radical member of Israel's three-man war cabinet, and he has decided to resign from Benjamin Netanyahu's emergency government over criticisms of how Netanyahu continues to handle the ongoing war in Gaza. Now, I say that he's moderate, but honestly, when you really look at his politics, he's still incredibly right-wing. It's just that he's not as right-wing as the extremists in the current Israeli government, and I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment. But he is Netanyahu's main political opposition leader, and he did decide to be part of this emergency coalition government after Hamas's attack on October 7th. Now, public opinion polls have repeatedly shown that Gantz would totally beat Netanyahu in an election. So let's be clear, Gantz is also asking for a new election to be held, and I think that is the right thing to do, considering all the protests of Israeli civilians in Israel toward Netanyahu and his handling of this war, but also his failure in keeping Israelis safe on October 7th. Now, Benny Gantz has been referred to as the centrist or the moderate member of this coalition. And look, compared to Netanyahu and the other far-right radicals, I guess that's somewhat fair to say, but I don't want anyone to think that he's like some radical lib, okay? He's not. So in his first major political speech in 2019, just as an example, he pledged to strengthen Israeli settlement blocks in the West Bank, which are, by the way, they go against international laws. I know it doesn't matter. It's like a joke every time I say it at this point, but it is true. But he would want to, again, strengthen Israeli settlement blocks in the West Bank. And he also said that Israel would never leave the Golan Heights. He also said this, quote, "The Jordan Valley will be our border, but we won't let millions of Palestinians living beyond the fence endanger our identity as a Jewish state." So, he's also commanded the IDF when it fought against Palestinian factions in Gaza between 2011 and 2015. If you can remember, 2014 was a particularly bloody year for Palestinians at the hands of the IDF. And so he's no dove, we have to be very clear about that. But he is less insane than other members of the current far-right government, and I'm talking about people who were literally accused of terrorism. So his decision to leave wasn't totally unexpected. He had been hinting that this was what he planned to do. He's been threatening to do this for some time now. And his decision to leave could like further divide the current government in Israel. And it could lead to even worse results in Gaza. And that is actually something that I'm concerned about. So he finally decided to go through with it after Netanyahu failed to meet his conditions for staying. And so there is a big difference between Netanyahu and Benny Gantz when it comes to the aftermath of the war in Gaza. That is the biggest difference I see between them. And you're about to get some more information about that in this next video.
Now, those conditions were a definitive and decisive plan to get the hostages back. We know that Gantz has been very vocal about his support for the proposal that's on the table at the moment, the proposal that US and Israeli officials are waiting for an official response from Hamas for. He also said he wants to have a day after strategy. So the day after the war ends, what exactly is the plan for Gaza? Now, Netanyahu has been very vague over recent months when it comes to that. And then he also wanted a plan to calm down the situation on the northern border with Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, saying that there are tens of thousands of Israeli residents who want to be able to move back to their homes. They've been evacuated for many months now because of tensions there. So he has said that those were the reasons he needed to step down.
Pausing here to deliver some honest truth as we do in our news coverage as well. TYT is facing challenges, guys, as the entire industry is. You know who could make the difference? You. If you hit the join button below, it's gonna make all the difference and keep us in business. We appreciate you, thank you.
So this is where the more moderate characteristics come out with Benny Gantz, right? He wants a plan for what happens to Gaza after the war is over. In various instances, he's made clear that he does not think it is a good idea for the IDF to occupy Gaza, which was actually shocking to me, and I hope he's actually being honest about that. As you heard in that video, he feels that it's really important to calm things down with Hezbollah in northern Israel, so Israelis can go back to their homes in northern Israel. At the same time, you have Netanyahu continuing to provoke more more conflict with Hezbollah, more conflict, at the near Gaza, and he's also calling for the IDF to occupy Gaza after the war is over, something that Gantz is not in favor of. So he's taking a stand and he's like, I'm not in favor of this. He's also not in favor of the fact that he feels that Netanyahu is dragging the war in Gaza out for his own political purposes. He feels that Netanyahu wants to remain in power, and the second the war is over, well, that's gonna be a day of reckoning for Netanyahu. So he's dragging this out as long as he can. Joe Biden recently made similar comments saying that Biden told Time there is every reason to believe that Netanyahu is prolonging the conflict to serve his own interests. It's great that Biden recognizes that. Maybe he should reconsider sending all these weapons and all this money, billions and billions of dollars, to a guy that he knows is dragging a war out for his own political purposes. Now, in his resignation speech, Gantz also encouraged the third member of the war cabinet, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, to do the right thing and resign from the government as well. Gallant has previously said he would resign if Israel chose to reoccupy Gaza, and encouraged the government to make plans for a Palestinian administration. Like, we hear from all of the insane lunatics within Israel's current government, right? I'm talking about the Bezalel Smotriches of the current government. And these are people who just openly salivate over the notion of ethnic cleansing and basically stealing whatever land is left for the Palestinian people. So it always shocks me now when I hear anyone from Israel's government say, no, we probably shouldn't occupy Gaza. Now, he also called for new elections and made a direct plea to Netanyahu. Let's watch.
In order to guarantee true victory this coming fall, when it will be the 1-year anniversary of this disaster, we should go for elections and reach a new government. I call on to Netanyahu, set a date for elections.
I think that it would be good for the Israeli civilians to be able to have a say over their leadership. I mean, there have been protests going on almost from the beginning of this war, and those protests have to do with how Netanyahu himself has been handling this war. Now, on Saturday, Netanyahu had urged him to stay. And on Sunday, before Gantz had even finished speaking, he wrote on X, Israel is in an existential war on several fronts. Betty, this is not the time to abandon the war. This is the time to join forces. But his pleas were ignored. And an hour after Gantz's announcement, 2 other Israeli officials followed suit. That includes Gadi Eisenkot, who is the former chief of staff of the Israeli army, who had joined the war cabinet, and then Israeli Minister Chili Tropper, who is basically someone who sent their resignation letter in as well. Eisenkot wrote to Netanyahu saying, we have witnessed that the decisions made by the government and by you are not necessarily motivated by national considerations and the good of the country. Foreign and political considerations have infiltrated the discussion rooms and influenced the decision making. So what do these resignations mean? You would think, well, you have some of the more moderate members of the government taking a stand. They're making their voices heard, and maybe this will, lead to some positive changes. But it could also lead to some devastating changes. It could lead to the consolidation and reinforcement of power for the far right members of the government. So Netanyahu will now be more dependent on those far right partners who are already just pouncing on Gantz's exit, and that's not good. On Sunday evening, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir demanded a spot in the war cabinet, which by the way would be a disaster, saying that Gantz and the smaller cabinet had bungled the war effort due to dangerous ideological decisions. Yeah, I would say that the dangerous ideological decisions come from lunatics like Itamar Ben-Gvir. And all he would do is make Israel more of a pariah internationally. I mean, he thinks that the bloodshed of the Palestinian people isn't enough. He wants more of it. And he's been very open about that. So speaking to reporters, Ben-Gvir said that he believes the solution is really that we will enter this war cabinet and be able to have even more influence. The people of Israel want victory in the south. The people of Israel want victory in the north. The people of Israel want to stop the fuel and humanitarian policy, most of which ultimately goes to Hamas. This is not how a country wants to win behaves. So in other words, he wants Palestinians to starve to death. He wants to stop the flow of whatever humanitarian aid is getting into the Gaza Strip. He wants to stop all of it. And as we know, you already have Palestinians in the north suffering from famine. You have people already dying from starvation, from dehydration. But it's not enough for Ben-Gvir. He wants more. Now, additionally, after Gantz's resignation, Israeli Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich, that's another one of the lunatics, said he would oppose any hostage deal between Israel and Hamas. Okay. Smotrich said during a Knesset committee meeting that Hamas was demanding the release of hundreds of murderers held by Israel so that hostages will be freed, and called the deal that was being negotiated collective suicide, saying it would lead to the murder of Jews. Now keep in mind that many of the Palestinian prisoners have never even been charged with anything. But okay. Smotrich ended up walking out of the meeting after being confronted by relatives of Israeli hostages in Gaza. Some of the families told Smotrich that they have waited 8 months to meet with him and said their relatives have been abandoned. Smotrich said that they are engaged in cynicism and demagoguery. They're allegedly engaged in demagoguery. Asked what price a hostage's life is worth, Smotrich accused the hostages' families of yelling, prompting loud arguments. These are the people within the current Israeli government that are destroying Israel. Not only is it influencing the policies and the military operations that are slaughtering innocent people in Gaza, it's also making Israel an international pariah. I'm shocked that you're finally seeing some individuals take a stand and say, no, we don't agree with this, and we're gonna quit this emergency government as a result of the terrible decisions that are being made. I'm glad they're taking a stand. But unfortunately, it appears that if things keep going the direction that they're going in, this is creating a bit of a power vacuum within the government that would allow for the far right members of the government to consolidate more power. And that would not bode well for Israelis. It would not bode well for Palestinians and those family members of the hostages. I mean, they're protesting now, they're unhappy now, but they're gonna be in for a world of pain if more power is consolidated behind the far right wing of the current Israeli government.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. We really appreciate it, guys. And we appreciate it if you become members, because that allows us to be independent, honest, progressive, all the things that you don't get from corporate media. And all of that is because of you guys. Hit the join button below and become one of us, become a young Turk.